a decent amount of women on here who
Mhm.
were former strippers. Like it turned into something that there was really an opening for that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I'm really curious because I have had a decent amount of women on here who
Mhm.
were former strippers or porn stars or sort of in that world. Um, and they have felt very misunderstood. Their
Mhm.
families disowned them. There was all sorts of stigma that they had to have some like sexual trauma to go into that field. You work with so many of these women. You
Mhm.
started in that kind of environment. What do you feel about that? Does your past have anything
Yeah.
to do with
I don't know. From my experience is like having known many women who were hardcore porn stars or softcore porn stars or Playboy models or legit actresses or like all of these things. People, I've known lots of these people, and I feel like it's across the board. I mean, I feel like every woman I know has a story like a Me Too-ish thing, or like, oh my God, but like I was date raped or whatever. Like I feel like I do not know one woman who doesn't have some kind of story where they're like, oh, that was weird. Now I look back and I'm like, that was not cool. But I don't think that that's like the gold standard of like that abuse makes you turn to sex work. I don't believe that at all. And there's nothing for me, I didn't like become a stripper dancer for anything reason that happening. I just wanted to be I wanted to be a ballerina when I grew up, and I was like realized that my obsessions with ballet, like I have an imprint on me. I had like this vinyl record from the 50s of Tchaikovsky, and it had a ballerina from the 50s on it. She had fishnet tights, point shoes, like a pale blue platter tutu, the dramatic makeup, the tiara, the black hair pulled back. And I was like, God, I was obsessed with that. And I realized though, like somebody asked me once, they said, what was it that you never got to do that you wanted to do? And I was like, well, I wanted to be a ballerina, but I wasn't good enough, you know? And they
that?
said, oh, what was it about it that you loved? And I said, I mean, it was just like the idea of like the point shoes and the beauty and the femininity and the exaggeration, the drama and like the makeup and and I'm saying all these things and he says, "Don't you feel like you got everything you asked the universe for, but in a very different way?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I never heard you say once that you just love to dance." And I was like, "No, I didn't love to dance because I was not good at it. I just wanted to move and I love like, the like the hands and the head and like the pointing the toes and all of these like the emotion and feeling of dance, but like I was never like God. So
Right.
there's a lot of things in my life that I realize, like things that I saw in my childhood or experienced in my childhood that made me want that all laid the groundwork for what I do now.
Yeah.
And it's
And
like all of it.
it's interesting because the women that I have talked to, and I lived in Vegas for years. The women that I knew that did this, they all came from a place of feeling very powerful. They
Mhm.
did it, chose to continue to do it because it made them feel beautiful, it made them feel powerful. And yes, everyone had a story, but
Yeah.
they knew exactly why they felt better on stage doing that. And then they could go home to like their real life. And they almost loved that stage life, right? To them, it was the closest they were going to get to being a famous actress and idolized by someone, right? So
Yeah.
I love hearing that from people.
Yeah. It's that feeling. Yeah. Same
Were
thing.
your family were they supportive of you?
Um, in the grand scheme of things, yes, but there were moments that they were questioning me, and you can't blame them. Listen, I was literally 20 years old, s- you know, working in a strip club and like paying my own way, by the way. Like I had credit cards, was very self-sufficient. And but my parents were, maybe they challenged me a few times, like, what are you doing? And I was like, I want to do this thing like Betty Page, because I'm doing all the bondage photos and stuff. And, you know,
Right. Well, I'm sure they wanted to know how you were going to turn this into a real living that had
yeah,
some
like, because there was no blueprint for that. And there was no living blueprint like what Gypsy Rose Lee. It hasn't happened in 75 years that there's been a famous bondage model or like burlesque star. So it was very much against the odds, which I think, I never had any lofty ideas of fame or that I would have a show in Vegas of this magnitude, like nothing. I never thought anything like that. I was just having a good time. And it's just like I didn't make this goal like I'm going to show you I'm going to be famous, But
Right.
however, at the same time, the time when my father finally accepted me and what I was doing was, I was on the cover of Playboy. And like for that generation of men, and that to the time I was on the cover of Playboy, um, for the second biggest issue of the year, the Playmate of the Year, but after was the Christmas issue. Like Sherilyn Fenn and Sharon Stone and Drew Barrymore and all of these like women had been on the cover of Playboy. So like it was the first time my dad was like, okay, so it was kind of weird to me that like fame legitimized me because I was kind of like, well, this is what I've been doing all along, It's just like just because you didn't get it, that's not my,
Right.
you know.
Right.